Hey, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge, everyone. So recently, I played a game in our club championship against a young man named Justin Storn. He's a national master, ranked 22, 25. He's a strong player. Currently I'm ranked 1869, and so he's got me by a good 350 points or so. And then at one point, he had me by almost 400 points. It's He's a really, really nice young man, though. I remember he's a teenager now, but I remember several years ago when him and his dad joined our club, and he was probably only 1400 rated UFCF 1400, maybe 1500 at the time, and I've seen him grow and progress throughout the years. C class player, then B class and A class and expert, and now he's a strong national master. Almost uh, close to 2300 at one point in time. So this was a very good challenge for me. It was round number one, and let's go ahead and jump into it. Hope you guys enjoy it. I was white, so I started off with my trusty English opening, and you guys know that that's what I play these days. I'm an English player because it doesn't require you to study the same variations and stay up to par with the most recent variations and lines that's being played. You can get a good solid game based off of just fundamentals. So I opened up C4. He played knight f6, G3, G6 here. Now I studied off of the Tony Kostin book called The Dynamic English, and he says that when the black side plays G6, then white can go ahead and get into the Botvinnik system, and it's a very safe and it's a very safe system where you're not putting too much out there, but you can still get a good attack as well. It's pretty flexible. Usually they say that this system is pretty good up until 2200 and below. You can get by playing the Botvinnik. Excuse me. So that's what I go ahead and play. And when I saw that he played G6, I felt very comfortable because I knew that the first few opening moves I was going to be fine. I wasn't going to get crushed tactically or anything like that. So bishop G7, knight C3, and the whole idea here is that white is going to clamp down on the D5 square and put a stronghold on the D5 square. The light squares, castle, E4, which makes even more of a lock. It grants white more of a lock on that D5 square. C5, knight G, E2, knight C6. Now, where there's a pro, I like to say there's always a con, or usually there's a con. And that con here is white creates a hole there on D4. So where the knight can jump in and out, and it could be pretty nightmarish for white if he finds himself in the wrong position. D3, D6, castles, A6. Now these have been pretty standard, well-known and book moves so far. Black's intention is to play on the queen side. He's going to push his B pawn, and he's going to use his dark square bishop, which might be his best piece in this type of setup here. He's going to use his dark square bishop and push on the queen side to create trouble on my queen side. And for me, though, white, I have a few more options. Let me get rid of some of these diagonals here, these lines. I have a few more options available. I could break with f4 when the time is right. I could break with b4 when the time is right. And I could also play in the middle and break in the middle when the time is right. So white is a little bit more flexible and has a few more options. Rook b8, rook b1. Now this was the first move that is not quite as popular as the previous moves I've played. A4 is the main line here, but I played rook b1 because I like to get my rook out of the way of his dark square bishop, because his dark square bishop is eyeing that diagonal there, and it can be a lot of tactics that comes about, especially if I ever play b3 and then the knight gets kicked out of the way here. It can be trouble for your rook if your rook is in the corner there. It's happened to me multiple times in my chess career, and it still happens too when someone catches me off guard. So I played rook b1 here. b5, b3. Now, I don't mind him. I like this position here for white because now, if he does decide to capture on c4, I can just capture back with my d pawn, and now I have a really, I have the semi-open d file that I can use, and my pawn structure is still pretty much intact. I'll have 2 pawn islands, one on the queen side, one on the king side. So I like the position here, and it's all made possible by playing rook b1 on the previous move. b4, and the knight jumps into d5, and I was pleased to get this position in the game here because the knight on d5 is a very, very strong knight. It occupies a lot of squares here. Look at all the different squares that knight is touching. So it's an octopus knight for sure. And if he ever captures my knight, then I can just take back with the e pawn, and then I'll swing my rook over, and I'll be able to use his backwards e pawn as a target. He plays knight e8, and I was happy to see him go backwards. Anytime that my opponent retreats, then it's a good sign. Must mean that I'm doing something correct. Bishop b2, and now I have the double fianchetto, and everything is in full force. All of my pieces are developed with the exception of my queen, and which you don't want to bring her out too early anyways. So I feel pretty good right here against someone that's 350 points higher than me. I feel like I'm holding my own at this point. If I can pick off his dark square bishop here, that would be great, because this dark square bishop is one of his primary defenders on his king side. So he doesn't want that to happen, of course. He plays knight d4, knight takes, and pawn captures. And right here, I have a little mini victory, because he doesn't want to give up his precious bishop, his precious dark square bishop. So he makes a concession, a small concession. He captures with his c pawn. But what that does is it creates a target. So his d pawn here is going to be a target. And then even if he decides to play e5 to protect it, now his d6 pawn is going to be a target. And then I'll go after that at some point, whenever the time is right. It's a static weakness that he'll have for the remainder of the game. His pawn structure will forever be flawed. So it's just a little small minor victory. You know, it's not something that's going to win me the game like right now or anything like or lose the game for him right now. It's too many other pieces, you know, involved, you know, at this point. Queen D2, attacking the B pawn, so he shores that up with A5. Now I go Queen G5 here, double attack on the E pawn. Yeah, he blocks it with F6. I go back, and now he plays E6. So he's creating a lot of space in his position here with his pawns. I would rather see him do that than move his pieces, because when his pieces gets active, when your opponent's pieces gets active, then that's when you can get in real big trouble. But if he keeps moving his pawns like this, then I'm perfectly fine and okay with it, because the thing is, pawns do not go backwards. So every time he moves a pawn, he's creating a target, basically. Knight F4, Bishop H6. Now right here, I thought for a long time in the game, just to say the game, it was a game of 2 hours. We each had 2 hours on our clocks with a 5-second delay. And I thought for a long time in this position here, because I saw that there was a tactic here with knight takes E6, but I just couldn't see a way for it to work. I saw that my knight was going to get trapped at the end of the variation. For example, if I play knight takes E6 here, then he captures my queen, I capture his queen. He plays bishop D7, right? And that's where my calculation stopped after that. But E5, if I would have went a little bit further, I could have found E5 here. The computer engine found this part. My calculation stopped after the bishop D7 because I didn't see any more than that. I stopped my calculation. So rook takes, bishop D5, king G7, now E6, and I'm actually would have gotten my bishop back at this point. Bishop takes, bishop takes. So my calculation abilities failed me. I didn't see deep enough, which was a good lesson, because I found that happened to me, you know, quite often in this game. I would see some variations, and I would see a problem, and then I would immediately stop and look elsewhere for a different solution, a different variation. But what the engine, you know, spotted that I didn't see numerous times is that if I would have just kept going a few more moves, 1 or 2 more moves deeper in my calculation, then I would have found a better variation. So this was a really good lesson for me, and it points out something that, you know, I need to work on going forward in my game so I can develop. So going back here to what actually was played, because I didn't see all of that. So instead of playing knight takes E6, I played queen D1, and I was wondering if he was going to bust up my king side by taking my knight, but he didn't. He played knight C7, right? And the reason why is because his bishop, his dark square bishop, is his best piece. You know, the rest of his pieces is on the back rank. His knight just came out to C7. So he wouldn't want to give up his only active piece, his best piece, for my little old knight there. So he didn't do that. That would have been a bad decision if he would have done that. So I play bishop C1 to protect it. King G7, bishop D2, bishop D7, and queen C1. Now I want to say a little bit about this move here. I spent the last 3 moves developing this tactic that I spotted as soon as he played king G7, because now I can play knight captures E6, and then I can pick off his dark square bishop here. He actually said that he didn't see any of this until we got to this position right now on the board, and then he saw it. So, but I spent the last 3 moves trying to set that up. But he spotted it at the very end and played G5, which was all right because for me it was all right because now his bishop is looking really bad. It's blocked in by his pawns and it's blocked in by his king. So his king and bishop is not looking too great. And it's another weakening pawn move. His pawns, again, they don't go backwards. So I played knight e2 here, which was a little too timid and passive that we both agreed after the game. He felt like I should have went to knight h5 and took advantage of all the holes that he's created on his king side. So that would have been a better, more aggressive move to play. Then I could have followed that up as well with f4, opened up the position with his king being exposed. It would have been a much more aggressive position for me. But I played knight e2 instead. He played e5 to protect his d pawn. So I thought for a while here as well because, at this point, this is 23 moves into the game. What should white do here? The opening phase is over. We're into the middle game. What should white do right here? Black's pieces are a little unorganized, and they're not in the best, they're not flowing is what I'm trying to say. They're not working in unison. They're all kind of disheveled. So I thought, if I let him regroup, then he'll just consolidate, and all of my little mini static victories will be for nothing. So I feel like now was the time to strike. So I struck out with f4 and tried to open the game up. He obliged. He plays g takes f, and then he got his king out to safety, king h8, because if you notice, this G file is going to be very, very active. It's going to be a hot commodity, this open file here. So he got his king out the way with king h8, and I pushed. I played f5. So I felt like this was a good move because it stops his bishop from having access to my king side. It kind of shuts out his bishop here. He would have to spend a few moves to get over to my king side. He would have to play, bishop e8, and then he would have to reroute here to h5. So I felt like f5 was a good move. And then also, if I was able to eliminate his bishop, then I felt like that's taking away a really good defender that he has. Excuse me. So he captures, and I capture back. Rook g8, king h2. So we're both, clearing our pieces out of the way on the g file so we can try to use it, because whoever can use that g file, they're going to have a major positional advantage. So knight a6, he found a really cool idea here positionally. If he can get his knight to the c5 square, then it's going to give me some long-term problems of trying to always defend my d3 pawn and also my b3 pawn. So that was a really good long-term plan that he came up with, of moving the knight to a6, and then eventually he would like to go to c5. Rook g1, knight c5, bishop f3, queen e7, knight g3. So with any attack, you have to bring as many pieces into it as possible, into the battle as possible. So if I can get my knight pretty far up the board, maybe like knight h5, and have the access to the open g file, and get my queen involved, then I feel like I would have a plus. I feel like I would have an advantage over him because his knight is doing his work on the queen side. And the difference is I'm going for checkmate, whereas he's going for material. So checkmate is always better than material because he would have to get the material, promote his piece, promote his pawn, and then maybe checkmate after that. Whereas I'm going straight for checkmate right off the bat. So A4. And I get knight H5 in. And I was happy that I was able to do that because I thought he might play bishop E8 first instead of playing A4. So he captures, but he's very adamant about getting some counter activity. So he wanted to play on the queen side. Then he played bishop C6, and this was a head scratcher for me because I just couldn't figure out why he played bishop C6. And I was happy to see it because I felt like he gave me a free tempo. So, and which is definitely needed in a game like this, where one tempo can make all the difference in the world. But so I kept searching and looking for reasons why bishop C6 was an important move in a position like this. And I was thinking that maybe it was for like some long-term tactics where he may sack his knight. Excuse me, let me get my arrows here. And the bishop, right? Maybe once my bishop moves out the way, maybe he might sack his knight and his bishop, in order to promote his pawn, his D pawn, maybe, and not now, obviously, but maybe like 5, 6, 7 moves, down the road. Maybe once I swing my pieces over to his king side, and leave this area, then maybe he was going to sack, his pieces here, and then try to promote something like that. The thing is, you have to look at everything, especially when you're playing against strong players, because you can't put anything past them. They're very resourceful, they're very tactical, and they're masters for a reason. They didn't become masters, just thinking, on like level 1. They think on level 10, so you have to think the same way. So even though I couldn't figure out exactly why, that's what I came up with. So I played bishop E2 here to shore up my pawn there, my D pawn that he's attacking, because I would like to play queen H6 and go after some type of mate. But the engine said I could have played queen H6 right away, right now. And I would have both the queen and the knight attacking the F pawn. He would play rook BF8 to protect that F pawn. I capture, rook captures, and then I get to pick off the pawn here, rook G7. So I win a pawn, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on him. Once my rook over here on B1 swings over, it may be able to swing, well, it can't swing up to A8 yet, but it may be able to put a lot of pressure on that file at some point, or maybe even go the other way, swing over to G1, things like something like that. You never know, but white definitely has the initiative at this point. Maybe even swing the knight back. The knight can swing back that way. I would have to do the calculation and find out and see which is the best thing to do. But the engine said this was a much better continuation than just playing bishop E2 to protect the D pawn that I did. Okay, so that was just to shore up the D pawn there. So again, that's another point about my calculating abilities. If I would have saw that, I would have played it. So again, it just lets me know that I need to work on my calculation studies. Bishop E8, and like right now, I feel like it's do or die time. I have to make something happen here. So he's trying to remove my knight, because he realizes how strong that knight is and how it's just, eyeing that G7 square. So he wants to get rid of it. I capture, and he captures back. King captures G8. Rook G1. King H8. So I have control of that important G file. Rook G7 here. Now, if I can get Queen H6 in the next move, then that's just going to be game over for black. It's going to be crushing. So he sacks his queen, and I capture back. So at the end of that, he gets my rook and knight, and I get his queen. So it's about, materially, it's about an even exchange, but, everyone loves their queen. Everyone loves to play with their queen, and no one wants to play without their queen. So even though materially it's almost the same, I look at a queen being closer to 9 points. Some people feel like it's 8 points. Some say 8.5. So materially it's almost the same. So it just depends on the position. So after the game, he said he saw all that beforehand. He saw when he played bishop to E8, he realized that he was going to have to, sack his queen, but he felt like this was the best way to go for him. He said that this was, he had to make a decision to either play on the queen side or play on the king side, and he chose this one here. Queen A2. Bishop C6, and I just want to point out, like, it's by no means over or anything like that, just because I have the queen, because he's still pretty solid. He still has pieces on the board, and I have some weaknesses as well. That knight is beautiful that he has, because it's forever, eyeing the B and D pawns. If I ever remove my defense from those pawns, then his B pawn is going to be a monster, hard to stop. Same thing about his D pawn, that it's going to be hard to stop. So the game is by no means over or anything like that at this point. So Queen A5. So I'm trying to make it tricky for him. If I can get Queen A5 in, then I can threaten his rook. I can threaten his bishop here. All that with check. I'm trying to pick up material. But again, I'm giving up this B pawn here. So Rook B7, Queen D8, and I have to note at this point here, remember it's a 2-hour game. We each had 2 hours on our clocks on our side, and he spent a lot of time, especially thinking about that Bishop D8 move, or excuse me, Bishop E8. He spent a lot of time on that move there, and so at this point here, he was down to about a minute on his clock. Now, you can play on a 5-second delay for a long time. Matter of fact, I lost the game a few years ago to a guy who was down to like his 5-second delay, and he was able to bang out like a good 20 or 25 moves and beat me, with just his 5-second delay. So you can still do a lot with a 5-second delay. I had about 35 minutes left on the clock, so I had plenty of time left on the clock. So I was in no rush, no hurry. I intentionally made sure to take my time at this point and make sure I play good, moves, good challenging moves. Try to find the best move on the board instead of just trying to play fast with him. No, I took my time, made sure I was playing moves that would make him think, instead of just trying to keep up with him and play his speed. So he captures the pawn. Knight takes B3. I go back bishop D1. At this point, I'm realizing that I'm probably going to have to sack my bishop for his B pawn here at some point. He plays bishop A4, queen A8. And even though at this point he was down to about 10 seconds on his clock, but I still felt uncertain about if I was going to win this game or not. Just because, again, I was going to have to sack my bishop for the B pawn. He was still going to have a lot of pieces on the board. So the game is not over at this point. He plays knight c5. I capture the bishop. And instead of capturing back, he plays b3. Good move, right? Because, you got to keep his eye on the prize, which is, promoting the pawn. If he promotes the pawn and gets the queen, then he's going to win, especially since my king is so exposed back here with no pieces to help defend it. So I thought for a while, at this point, because it's a critical time in the game. Like I said, he was down to, 10 seconds or so, at this point. So I thought for a while, and I came up with, do I capture the pawn now, or do I block with bishop b5? And I chose the block. He pushes the b2. I play queen a2 here, and he captures the d pawn, which also protects the b pawn here. So now, what do you do now? He still has about 5 or 10 seconds left on his clock, plus the delay he gets every move, the 5-second delay. And here I decided to play king g1 because I wanted to walk my king over and I was going to walk my king over like this and try to attack the knight and get my king closer to the action. That's what I wanted to do. But it was a much, much simpler way. And king g1 actually loses the game if he finds the best continuation. But again, he only had 10 seconds on his clock. So let me show you what the best move was. The best move was queen g3. This move here attacks the knight and it attacks the pawn. And at the same time, it keeps an eye on that promotion square the whole time. Everything is connected. So that was the best move. Queen b3. But I didn't find that. I played king g1. I wanted to walk my king over, but that loses. He played king f8. Now let me show you why it loses. It loses because if he would have just played king h6 here, then it would have been no way for me to stop his rook from swinging around and helping the pawn promote. It was just no way. If he plays rook a7, and I capture, then he promotes his pawn. If he plays queen a7 and I capture the pawn, then, he captures back with the knight and I'm down material. I'm definitely losing then. The d pawn is going to promote as well. So if he would have just played king h6 here, then he would have won the game. Probably even though he only had, his 5-second delay left, he probably would have won the game still. But he played instead king f8, which was just a blunder because that leads to queen a8 check. Then I get to pick off the rook. Check. Then I get to pick off the rook as well. And the very next move was check. And then I can finally move my bishop out the way and capture the pawn whenever I want. I can move my king over. I can walk my king over now and capture the pawn. So at that point, he ran out of time. He was thinking, and he didn't have much time left. So he ran out of time. His flag fell, and I won the game. And I felt bad that I won on time, but it didn't really bother me too much. One, because the guy is 22, 25 rated USCF, and I'm rated 1869. So a win is a win, especially when I played a pretty good game all the way up to the very, last few moves when I played the king G1. Up until then, I played a pretty solid game. So you win some, you lose some. Anytime you can beat someone that's almost 400 points higher than you, in a long time control type of a game, that's a big win. That's a big accomplishment. So I'm off to a good start in the club championship. Round number 1, I'm off with a victory. The problem is that Next round, I'll probably play. He was the number 1 seed, so in the next round, I'll probably play the number 2 seed, either the number 2 or number 3 seeded player. So I'm gonna have a long journey ahead of me of playing the top seeded players. But to be the best, you have to beat the best. So, okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was a long one today, but hopefully you got something out of it. When I learn things, I want to share it with you guys as well. So let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the game today, and I'll see you guys next time.